is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पारी खेलने की, परफेक्ट फिट, क्वालिटी टेस्ट, मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, ठीक वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस की छत, जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
सरिया दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
चेस्ट गार्ड है, दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये देना। JSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार, प्योर स्टील, मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत JSW सीमेंट के साथ। JSW सीमेंट, द लीडर्स चॉइस।
कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा, और जो मेरा वो सबका। इसीलिए पहली बार JSW पेंट्स लाए हैं 1808 शेड्स एक ही प्राइस पर। JSW पेंट्स, थिंक ब्यूटीफुल।
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पारी खेलने की, परफेक्ट फिट, क्वालिटी टेस्ट, मैच से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, ठीक वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस किचन, जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
GSW न्यू स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
सरिया दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
चेस्ट गार्ड है, दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये देना। JSW न्यू स्टील TMT बार, प्योर स्टील, मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने
In 1868, The Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Our today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Our today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Our today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के इस सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। रिलायंस, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
Welcome to the world of Tata Steel, a flagship company of the global business conglomerate, the Tata Group. Tata Steel is one of the world's most geographically diversified steel producers, with operations and commercial presence across the world. The story began with the dream of one man, Jamsetji Nusserwanji Tata, a pioneer, a visionary, a man ahead of his times. He had his heart set on building a steel plant in India that would compare with the best globally. His dream was brought to fruition by his son, Dorabji Tata, and thus was born Tata Iron and Steel in Jamshedpur in 1907. At the turn of the 21st century, fueled by its global aspirations, Tata Steel expanded its footprint to Southeast Asia in Singapore and Thailand. Acquisition of Chorus in Europe in 2007 placed it amongst the top global steel companies in the world. In 2015, Tata Steel set up a state-of-the-art integrated steel plant at Kalinganagar, Odisha in India. The Phase 2 expansion of Kalinganagar steel plant from 3 million TPA to 8 million TPA is currently underway. The company is all set to pursue domestic growth with its acquisition of Bhushan Steel Limited and the steel business of Usha Martin. This forms part of the overall strategy to increase its India footprint, build capacity in long products, and enrich the product portfolio. Besides steel manufacturing facilities, the company has mining assets in the state of Jharkhand and Odisha in India. Tata Steel has evolved into a leading steel manufacturer, catering to diverse market segments. In its trend-setting journey, spanning more than a century, Tata Steel has contributed immensely towards the well-being of the planet and people. Guided by its vision to be the global steel industry benchmark for value creation and corporate citizenship, Tata Steel is poised to lead the future.
सुरक्षा हर पिच पर, ताकत लंबी पारी खेलने की, परफेक्ट फिट, क्वालिटी टेस्ट, मैथ से पहले ये सारे चेक्स बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, ठीक वैसे जैसे घर की छत चूज करते समय। तो बस ले आइए GSW कलर ऑन प्लस किचन, जो दे आपके घर को मजबूती और सुरक्षा। GSW कलर ऑन प्लस, सुंदर छत सालों साल।
JSW नियो स्टील TMT सरिया बेस्ट है।
सरिया दिखता कहाँ है?
ये देखिए बेस्ट क्वालिटी।
चेस गार्ड है, दिखता कहाँ है?
दिखता नहीं तो कुछ भी लगाओगे क्या? ये देना। JSW नियो स्टील TMT बार, प्योर स्टील, मजबूत घर।
ये दीवारें जानती हैं हर शुरुआत का पता। एक नई सोच के साथ अपने सपने की सुबह।
जब उम्मीद मिलाए हिम्मत से हाथ, हर सपने को मिले मजबूती का साथ।
आओ बनाए हर सपने को मजबूत JSW सीमेंट के साथ। JSW सीमेंट, द लीडर्स चॉइस।
कभी हिंदुस्तान के रंगों के बारे में सोचा है? लाल, पीला, हरा, नीला। तो चलो मिलकर इस रंगीन चादर को फिर से सिलते हैं। जो तेरा वो मेरा, और जो मेरा
Oh, hello, Jamshed. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good, good. I'm good. How are you? Shall we
Surviving
start?
by the grace of God. Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, great, great. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Partnership Summit 2020. And this session is on the future construct of the Indo-Pacific region. And I want to firstly welcome Dr. S. Jaishankar, Minister of External Affairs of the Government of India. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am truly pleased to have this privilege to be together with you this afternoon. I have many happy memories of our long association and a high respect for you as a person and as a professional, Dr. Jaishankar. This session is about the Indo-Pacific, but I want to begin by congratulating you on your book, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World. It is deeply thoughtful, hugely perceptive, and a must-read for all interested in the India way in international relations. And of course, the Indo-Pacific is well covered through, though you have been very diplomatic in your book as you finish the book after becoming the External Affairs Minister. And also, Ladakh was yet to happen, I think. The different chapters of your book begin with very thoughtful quotes. The one that I like best is the last one from Swami Vivekananda. And I quote, "The world is a great gymnasium where we come to make ourselves strong. And to make ourselves strong, there are many facets, many dimensions. It's the economy, it's security, it's the maritime region, it's cybersecurity, just to mention a few. You are, of course, at the center now of India's diplomacy with the world, dealing with China, dealing with USA under President-elect Biden, dealing with the ASEAN region and East Asia, and of course, our relationship, which to some extent is a bit of a disappointment, which is that we have not joined RCEP. You, of course, have to deal with the Quad, you have to deal with Europe, you have to deal with the world. And you have many challenges on your plate, and hopefully you will share your thoughts with us and give us an insight into your perspective. And of course, I'm told that we have a very large audience, both in India and outside India. So Dr. Jaishankar, I give you the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Godrej, dear colleagues, friends, it's a great pleasure to join you all this afternoon. I've been asked to speak, as you've heard, about the Indo-Pacific concept that has recently gained greater salience in diplomatic conversations. But this is a business gathering. And my effort today would be to convince all of you why the Indo-Pacific matters in your life as well. In doing so, I expect to set at rest some of the misconceptions in that regard. Hopefully, that would contribute to an even wider understanding of an approach that has actually been gathering increasing traction in recent days. So, what is the Indo-Pacific really about? Literally, it signifies the confluence of the Indian and the Pacific Oceans that can no longer be handled as distinct spheres. We are speaking of a maritime space that connects Africa, Asia, Eurasia's Pacific coast, Oceania, and the Pacific coast of the Americas. Over 50% of global trade traverses through this maritime domain. It is also home to over 64% of the world's population and 62% of the global GDP. And obviously, the security, stability, peace, and prosperity of this vast region is vital for the world. Now, why then are we looking at it in a joint rather than a separate manner? It is always tempting to speak of grand strategy and nuanced diplomatic signaling. The truth, however, is far more prosaic. Whether it is the yardsticks of trade and investment, connectivity and travel, or politics and security, what begins in the Pacific no longer ends there. And the same holds true for the Indian Ocean. In essence, the landscape, capabilities, and activities are now very, very different. Every nation and region would have its own version of this reality. But I can speak for India and say this. It captures a mix of our broadening horizons, widening interests, and globalized activities. Many would agree with us. Others could actually offer additional justification. Indo-Pacific, for some, can also be a resource optimization in a bigger, enlarged arena, or just a desire to contribute better to global challenges that now transcend old boundaries. Many have also chosen in that process to reaffirm basic principles like adherence to the rule of law. What is worth recognizing, however, is that analysis lags behind developments. As I have actually written in the book which Jamshed mentioned, Indo-Pacific is not tomorrow's forecast, but yesterday's reality. Now, this change actually reflects a regional manifestation of what are a set of larger global trends. As societies have got more globalized and power distribution rebalanced, the interests of many now extend way beyond their near proximity. This trend has been particularly strong in Asia, which has been at the heart of a new economic resurgence. Whether viewed from the perspective of resources, endeavors, or challenges, it is therefore no longer realistic to confine our thinking within the earlier box. Doing so would either mean we are being deliberately outdated, or that we have chosen to make only selective exceptions. Neither, of course, suits India or indeed much of the international community. Denying Indo-Pacific is tantamount to refuting globalization. Who owns the Indo-Pacific as a concept is a debate in itself. There is as much history there as a diversity of opinion. The fact is, pretty much everyone who recognizes how important an understanding of the Indo-Pacific has become to their lives has a point of view. The contemporary record shows that India and Japan were actually the early movers, Australia and US somewhat later. The ASEAN announced its approach last year. Others in Asia have joined in as well. France, Germany, the Netherlands have all recently enunciated their official Indo-Pacific policies. And I just heard 2 days ago from the British Foreign Secretary about their Indo-Pacific tilt. In that sense, it is truly a pluralistic exercise on the importance of a theater with the resulting ideas about its future and how it's going to evolve. This active debate should be treated as a recognition of reality and a statement of priority. Quite appropriately, much of it revolves around the ASEAN, whose East Asia Summit initiative has actually long had its own Indo-Pacific connotations. Now, how does all of this unfold? Given that this region is primarily a maritime space, countries are naturally focused on building practical cooperation in that domain. A safe, secure, and stable maritime space is a necessary condition for peace, security, and prosperity. Conversely, threats there imperil human security in all its dimensions, whether by disrupting commerce, disturbing the ecology, or creating disputes over ownership and rights. In our interdependent world, the complexity of such challenges has become too large for any one nation to address by itself. Indeed, the very vastness of this arena brings out the need for collaborative action and why that has now become so pressing. Naturally, the individual interests of countries are at stake, but then so too is their collective benefit in ensuring that the global commons is better secured. It is this challenge of harmonizing the pulls and pressures that the Indo-Pacific policy of all players need to address today. Now, most of us at this summit would, I think, intuitively appreciate why India needs to give the Indo-Pacific its fullest attention. They will recall that the era of reform began with the Look East policy and the extension of our activities to the ASEAN. They would also remember that in due course, this paved the way for a much more intensive engagement with East Asia and Oceania, with Japan, Korea, China, Australia. It took, in fact, but a few years for more of India's trade to move eastwards, to be conducted eastwards than westwards. To the change of direction was also added additional facets of cooperation ranging from connectivity to security. The Look East thereby became the Act East. And it kept growing. We are now reaching out to the Pacific coast of the United States and Canada, just as we do much more with Latin America. Our engagement with the Pacific Islands has become serious. So far from being an arcane issue of international relations, the Indo-Pacific is actually a bread and butter expression of our political, economic, connectivity, travel, and societal interests. It actually relates to everything that all of you do every day. And it relies heavily on ensuring the safety and security of the maritime domain. To give that a practical shape, India has proposed an Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative at the East Asia Summit in November last year. The IPOI, as the acronym goes, is aimed at furthering practical cooperation as an open, non-treaty based global initiative. It has 7 pillars that address different aspects of the challenges that international community faces. They range from maritime security, maritime ecology, maritime resources, capacity building and resource training, to disaster risk reduction and management, science, technology and academic cooperation, and finally, trade, connectivity, and maritime transport. The IPOI is an inclusive and open initiative seeking to better manage, conserve, sustain, and secure the maritime domain. It does not envisage creating a new institutional framework and will rely on the ASEAN-led East Asia Summit framework, though not necessarily limited to it. Think of it this way. It is like a lowest common denominator approach to shared problems that we all know require urgent and coordinated solutions. India will be the driving force, obviously, behind all the areas identified under IPOI. But we are also exploring partnerships with like-minded countries. Since the announcement of IPOI in November 2019, Australia, Japan, and ASEAN member states have all expressed willingness to work with India in these areas. In fact, Australia and Japan have agreed to lead on IPOI pillars on maritime ecology and connectivity, respectively. Given India's inherent strengths in the Indian Ocean region, we are keen to take the lead in disaster risk reduction and maritime security. India, as many of you know, has been the first responder for HADR, that is the humanitarian assistance and disaster response situations, in this region, especially since 2015. It has been, in fact, pretty much a regular effort for us, sometimes with more than one country annually. And I can, there's a long list out there, but I can say this, that this year, providing COVID relief to Maldives, Mauritius, Madagascar, Comoros, Seychelles, including by deputing our people there, as also medicines to the Pacific Islands. These are the latest in that line of endeavors. India co-chairs the ADMM Plus, this is the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting, ADMM Plus expert working group on HADR with Indonesia. And we are also presently the lead country for disaster risk management in the Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA. We have a tsunami early warning system in the Indian Ocean through which are currently providing information to countries in the region. The system, in fact, is run by the National Center for Ocean Information Services, which is in Hyderabad. We are also the prime mover in the creation of the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which was announced by the Prime Minister at the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. It aims to promote disaster resilient infrastructure through research and knowledge sharing in the fields of infrastructure risk management, standards, financing, and recovery mechanisms. We have also taken the lead in evolving common guidelines on HADR and common SOPs for search and rescue in the Indo-Pacific region. We are currently finalizing the guidelines on HADR cooperation within IRA and are working similarly with the EAS for finalizing their guidelines. Now, when it comes to maritime security, here too we have been promoting plurilateral and multilateral cooperation against non-traditional security challenges, including transnational crimes, piracy, drugs, arms smuggling, and human trafficking. This area, of course, addresses the traditional domains of security, starting with maritime domain awareness, long-range identification and tracking of ships, etc. In fact, again, if you look at it, India has been taking the lead in organizing maritime security cooperation conferences under the East Asia Summit. The fourth such conference was held in Chennai in February this year in partnership with Australia and Indonesia. India is also an active participant in the Singapore-based Regional Cooperation Agreement on combating piracy and armed robbery against ships in Asia. This started when there was a lot of piracy around Indonesia. We have maintained deployment of ships for maritime security and anti-piracy operations in the Western Indian Ocean as well, and the Gulf of Aden since 2008, and the Gulf of Oman since 2019. They have helped greatly in addressing these threats and what would be of interest to many of you in reducing insurance costs. We have also been at the forefront in promoting maritime safety and security, participating in plurilateral and bilateral exercises, both by the Navy and the Coast Guard, for several years, have helped to build confidence, achieve interoperability, and evolve common SOPs between forces of different nations. We have been leading the efforts in the region to promote what is called white shipping information exchange through an information fusion center, which is located in Gurugram. Several countries have already joined this effort, and many more are keen to do so. India's maritime domain awareness initiatives have strengthened capabilities of several countries, and we have also helped with equipment, with training, and we have assisted with hydrographic survey, which has supported the charting of waters for some countries, and I can tell you many more countries are actually interested in that. Now, despite our best efforts, the fact is that India doesn't have the capacity to lead cooperation efforts across all the 7 pillars. It is with this view that we are actively seeking partnerships with like-minded countries. If I were to point to a case in point, so to speak, it is the maritime ecology pillar. This is a critical area where we are trying to protect the marine environment, including finding technology-based solutions to pollution and combating, in particular, plastic marine litter, ocean acidification, and oxygen depletion. Most recently, in August 2020, we actually sent Coast Guard teams and equipment to Mauritius to fight a very significant oil spill there that caused an environmental emergency. Other countries helped too, obviously. But I mention this because it highlights the need for regional cooperation in such emergencies. So we are particularly glad that Australia has agreed to lead cooperation in this on the maritime ecology pillar of the IPOI. India and Australia will together host an EAS conference on combating marine pollution and marine plastic debris, hopefully sometime early next year, which will bring together the larger East Asia summit community. India is also part of the Bay of Bengal Large Marine Ecosystem Project that seeks to improve the lives of coastal population and to help with the regional management of the Bay of Bengal environment and its fisheries. Another important focus is on marine resources. This involves conservation activities, including sustainable management of fish stocks, preservation of species diversity, action against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, IUU fishing, conservation of maritime protected areas, and ensuring sustainable exploitation of seabed resources. IUU fishing, and I'm sure Jamshed would agree with me here, in particular has emerged as a very important issue. And there is a need to address this through a regional framework of cooperation. India has undertaken to organize an EAS conference in that regard. India has also been providing training through the International Training Center for Operational Oceanography, which is a UNESCO designated Category 2 center at the National Center for Ocean Information Services. In addition, there have actually been 3 ASEAN-India workshops on the blue economy that have been held so far. This is a platform for ASEAN-India expert-level discussion on developments in the blue economy, sustainable harnessing of marine resources, maritime connectivity, and maritime safety. 2 other pillars that we have identified under the IPOI are capacity building, resource sharing, and science, technology, and academic cooperation. And I'd like to speak briefly to explain why. Under them, there is a need to achieve coordinated efforts to help increase the capacity of small island states in the Indo-Pacific so that they can safeguard their own EEZs and its resources. And the fact is they have some real problems right now in doing so. This could include training of Coast Guard and maritime security officials, developing their legal skills, building capacity in maritime trade controls, handling fiscal tools, preparing for the blue economy, providing fishing zone advisories and ocean state forecasts, and developing mitigation strategies to deal with sea rise levels. Cooperative studies in weather mapping, the precipitation cycle, ocean currents, migratory maritime species, marine water quality degradation, and sea level rise have also become increasingly important. After all, global weather patterns are significantly determined by the maritime domain. Practical cooperation in these areas would obviously be of great utility for the region, of course, but I think would also make a very major contribution for the global environment. So that brings me to the seventh and last pillar of the IPOI, which is the trade, connectivity, and maritime transport pillar. The importance of this pillar, of course, needs very little reiteration to a gathering like this. We have been working now for many years to realize greater connectivity in the region, connectivity in the fullest sense of the term. Our approach is, I want to emphasize, consultative, viability driven, and partner based. It includes roads, shipping lines, ports, air connections, and also digital connectivity. Now, these are real opportunities for Indian companies who are prepared to look at it. We have announced a $1 billion line of credit for connectivity projects with the ASEAN. And I want to share with you that, after a lot of preliminary work, projects to utilize it are now actually gathering steam. They are under now very serious discussion. We have also for some years now been pursuing the trilateral highway project connecting India, Myanmar, and Thailand. And we look forward to a time which shouldn't be that far away to extend it eastwards towards Vietnam. We are also working on the Kaladan multimodal transit transport project that provides connectivity to the Sitwe port in Myanmar. And these projects, once they are done, they will, change our sense of distance to Southeast Asia, because they will actually give us that smooth physical connectivity that we have not had so far. We have also started to look at building connectivity between Andaman and Nicobar and Aceh in Indonesia. And this is focused around the port of Sabang. Announced in 2018, it is really work in progress now. Another interesting connectivity initiative is between Ranong port in Thailand and Visakhapatnam, Chennai, and Calcutta on our end. Relevant MOUs were signed last year, and again, we hope to take it forward. On the other coast, India and Maldives are working to operationalize a cargo ferry service. We are also looking forward to building infrastructure and connectivity projects in Malé under Government of India lines of credit. Our infrastructure partnership with Sri Lanka is undergoing upgradation. There are very active discussions underway in a variety of projects. We are also exploring third country cooperation with Japan on projects out there. As for trade, the Indo-Pacific is obviously central to our exports and imports. We have a number of FTAs in place, but we chose not to join the RCEP after weighing the pros and cons very, very carefully. The focus today is attracting more investments and technology partnerships as part of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The PLI schemes, we believe, could make a big difference there, as indeed our continuous efforts at making it easier to do business. So overall, the cumulative impact of these activities under all the pillars of IPOI that I have brought out, tell you in a sense how much more we count in the world today. In this situation, the fact is that we will be judged by what we can deliver on the ground and on the seas. If our footprint is increasing, our responsibilities are growing too. They are taking us on new journeys to more destinations. They're also changing the manner in which we are engaging others. The Indo-Pacific speaks as much for the changes in the world as in our own aspirations. It truly reflects a new India, and I thank you for the opportunity today to share my thoughts on that subject.
So thank you very much, Dr. Jaishankar, for that very wide-ranging exposition on our interests in the Indo-Pacific and what the opportunities are, and also some of the challenges. And, I, of course, my hobby and my passion is sailing and I've done a lot of that on the west coast of India. And I can tell you that some years ago, when I went to Lakshadweep, I found that the fishermen there were actually baiting tuna with individual hooks. So that is one of the most sustainable ways of fishing. But when they landed the catch, they would end up canning it. So here was an item which was very valuable. Like in, say, in Japan, for instance, they would highly value fresh tuna. But here was something that was highly valued and then canned, and then it becomes a commodity. So these are the types of opportunities I think that we have, and with such a large coastline in India, our fishermen and our marine-based economy, can get a huge boost through these initiatives. So I really think this is one of the most promising initiatives for us. So thank you very much for bringing all this out and talking about these issues. I greatly appreciate your joining this partnership summit. And we do understand that you have many pressing engagements. And so I want to thank you on behalf of CII, and thank you on behalf of all of those in the audience for giving us the benefit of knowing more about the Indo-Pacific. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.